Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to this review of the British Tier 6 tank destroyer, the AT8, or Assault Tank 8. This was one of a series of tank destroyers developed by the Nuffield Company that was designed as, well, as the name suggests, as an assault tank. So it was supposed to be thickly armoured and slowly and ponderously attack enemy fortifications, designed in, sort of about 1943, that kind of ballpark. And this was developed alongside another project called the AT7. Basically, the only difference between the two was that the AT7 had a side-mounted gun, and the AT8 had a gun mounted, broadly speaking, in the centre of the machine. It followed on from things like the AT1 or the AT2, which is in-game at Tier 5. So that's how this thing fits into history. What is it that we get in-game? Well, first thing that becomes immediately noticeable when you look at the stats is that you get 800 hit points in this machine, which is a lot. If you look at the AT2 at Tier 5, that gets 450, which is the same as a same-tier medium tank. 800 is basically on the low side, but it's broadly speaking the same as a same-tier heavy tank. So this thing comes with an awful lot of health, and that's not something that I, generally speaking, find encouraging, because health is one of those parameters that's often used to buff an otherwise underperforming machine. It's a 41-ton tank with a 410 horsepower engine and a 20 km/h speed limit. This is a snail. It's a slug. It slowly moves around the battlefield. It goes absolutely nowhere quickly. The traverse speed is 20 degrees a second, which is also garbage. The hull armour, well, that looks impressive. Well, it looks the same as the AT2, which was a well-armoured machine, but I'm going to rant and rave more about that a little bit later. Long story short, do not believe what this 203mm tells you. The armour on this tank is really not particularly good. Talk about the gun in just a moment. The view range is also absolute dross on this machine, 330 meters. I've got tier 2s with a better view range than that, I think. This is where I'm going to be proven horribly wrong. For example, just as a comparison, the Cruiser 3 tier 2 light tank has 10 meters less view range. 10 meters. Jump up to tier 3, the Cruiser Mark 4, and you have the same view range. Valentine has an extra 10 meters on top of that. This is an absolutely terrible... I can't be bothered to look at other tier 2s to see if I'm actually right. But this is an absolutely terrible view range. Signal range, 550 meters. It is cursed with these mid-tier British radios, which are trash. 550 meter signal range is terrible. Having said that, it's not something you really notice that much, because generally speaking, you're not going fast enough to go anywhere away from the rest of your team. And breathe. Okay, this is a tank destroyer though. What about the guns? Well, the guns are actually interesting, and in my opinion are the highlight of this machine, sort of. There are a variety of different guns to use, and yeah, I'm just going to compare two, and we'll get on to why I'm just comparing these two in a second. These are really the two top guns on the machine. You have the Ordnance Quick-Firing 77mm Anti-Tank Gun Mark II, and the Ordnance Quick-Firing 17-pounder Anti-Tank Gun Mark VII. Yeah, the British are really good with their gun naming conventions, aren't they? What do you have? Well, one gun is basically a cut-down version of the other. The 77mm gun is a cut-down version of the 17-pounder. Just to give you a point of reference, the 77mm gun is the anti-tank version of the gun that you find mounted on the Churchill 6 and the Comet. The 17-pounder is the anti-tank version of the gun you find mounted on machines like the TOG 2, the Black Prince, and so on and so forth. So, let's start off with the 77mm. 15.79 rate of fire, which is bloody good. 148 penetration is decidedly dubious, but if you're willing to fire APCR, that goes up to 208. 140 average damage. This is only a 76mm gun, so the HE round is a little bit dubious. 0.32 dispersion at 100 meters and a 1.7 second aiming time. This is the most accurate gun on a tier 6 tank, to the best of my knowledge. The accuracy and aiming time stats on this gun are absolutely sublime. They are fantastic. So what does the 17-pounder bring to the party? Well, if you look at the stats, you'll notice a lot of them are very, very, very similar. Same high explosive round, same accuracy, same aiming time. The 17-pounder gets 10 more alpha damage with armor piercing and armor piercing composite rigid ammunition, and gets 171 pen with its AP rounds rather than 148, and 239 pen with its APCR, which is basically overkill, rather than 208 on the 77mm gun. So essentially, if you don't want to fire much premium ammunition and you just want to use AP rounds and you want a good general purpose gun that will do this tank well, use the 17-pounder. If you are happy to fire premium rounds, not that much to be honest, the accuracy really does make this tank shine. But if you don't mind firing some premium rounds, and you want the higher DPM, take the 77mm gun. There's a genuine choice of guns on this machine, which is nice. I like that. I mean, the 17-pounder is technically the top gun, as in it's the last gun you research on this machine, but there's a genuine choice. And the guns are good. In my opinion, the guns, as I say, are the best thing about this tank. Guns are good. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And if you think otherwise, reevaluate them. Have a look at them again. The only way in which they're really lacking is their alpha damage is a bit on the weedy side. But every other stat is good. So, you know, let's not complain too much about them. On that note, let's go and have a quick look at the grind, seeing as we're talking about grinding out guns. So, this is the original British Tank Destroyer line. They recently introduced a new one, but this is the original TD line. So at Tier 2, you have the Universal Carrier 2-pounder, which is this adorable little tankette, and is actually, to the best of my knowledge, the most widely produced armoured vehicle in history. It's armoured in the very loosest of sense. You know, it's armoured in the way that a tin of baked beans is armoured. But technically there's armour there, and it mounts an anti-tank gun. So this is a little tankette. It's a really fun little machine, actually. Small, stealthy, hard to hit, no armour, good guns, good gun traverse. It's a lovely little machine. Move up to Tier 3, you get the Valentine AT, and you suddenly go from a relatively mobile machine to not. It's a slow tank. It's mounted on the chassis of the Valentine, which is well armoured. At Tier 3, it's certainly well armoured, but you've got a gun shield around the gun, which is made of tissue paper and fairy wings. The gun selection's pretty good. You've got a choice of a 6-pounder gun, 57mm 6-pounder, which is a nice regular anti-tank gun, or you get the British Tier 5 derp gun, which can be good fun. It's a support tank though. This is not a frontline brawler because of the dubious armour. You get the Electo at Tier 4, which is an absolutely fantastic little machine, but is going to get its view range slightly nerfed in patch 9.6. It's not going to be hit as bad as a lot of the other Tier 4 tank destroyers, but it is going to take a little bit of a battering. But I'll still play it. It's a great little machine. It's fast, it's mobile, it's got a good selection, a good if unconventional selection of guns. Lovely view range, although as I say, that's going to take a little bit of a nerf. Absolutely no armour, small target, hard to hit. Very nice machine. The playstyle of the line then completely and drastically changes at Tier 5. At Tier 5, you get the AT2. Sorry about that. The AT2 it's the first of the assault tanks, which you then have between Tiers 5 and 9. And this is, well, the armour's good on this machine, let's say that. 203mm of armour. It's got weak spots, sure. The guns let it down a little bit, but you've generally got weaker players or newer players trying to shoot you. They don't know where to shoot you, and often you can just roll around trolling people to death. You have a choice between a 6-pounder gun, which was alright at lower tiers, but it's looking a little bit weedy here at Tier 5. And you also get the same howitzer that you could have been using at Tiers 3 and 4 that you can mount on this machine. So the guns kind of let this down a little bit, but it's a good fun machine. And then you get to the AT8 at Tier 6. And the armour, as I'm going to discuss a bit later, is not worth anywhere near as much as it is on the AT2. And so you have this strange amalgam. You have the poor mobility of the AT2 combined with good gun that you sort of have on the lower tier tank destroyers, with armour that can work but is a little dubious, not massively unlike the Valentine AT. But what's the grind actually like when you get to this machine? Well, the answer is either bloody awful or perfectly acceptable. And there are two answers to that. When I ground this machine out, the answer to that question was atrocious. Why atrocious? Because this engine, I believe, yep, you do not already have unlocked unless you've gone down the British medium line. This engine you at least have from the AT2, so your stock configuration has this 395, yay, horsepower engine. Radios, I mean, frankly, who's counting, but just in case. Oh, does this thing come from the AT2? Yes, it does. And this one, yes, it does. Okay, so you can have the top radio, whoop, but the reason this is so painful is that it starts off with the stock 6-pounder gun. The AT2 didn't use a better gun. And you don't have the option of using the howitzer here. So you're stuck with this gun. And so your options are get frustrated or spam a lot of APCR ammo. I've actually got a replay up where I'm using this stock gun and I managed to pick up first class mastery unapologetically firing quite a lot of APCR. So you drive around in this and you eventually grind out experience for the next gun, and you look at it or you equip it and you realise that it's even worse than the previous gun you were using. The accuracy is worse, the aim time's the same, the penetration's worse, the premium round's worse, the increase in alpha damage is barely noticeable. It's just a horrible, horrible gun. I recommend never equipping this. I would stay with the 6-pounder. You then grind out another 14,500 experience and you eventually get to the 77mm gun, which is, as I've already discussed, is a decent gun, and it's the first decent gun this tank gets. And then I would recommend spending the time unlocking the 17-pounder because it's used on the AT7 anyway, so you might as well unlock it a tier early. Or there is now, you lucky people, an alternative. Wargaming have introduced a new British line as of patch 9.5. It's basically a medium line, light/medium line up to tier 6, and there's also this tank destroyer line, and it culminates in tank destroyers that could go from tier 5. If you play the tier 5 Archer, you can unlock this 17-pounder gun, which is the same 17-pounder gun you use on the AT8, and you do not have to have all the intermediate guns unlocked. You can then just mount this gun straight away and screw the 6-pounder. And frankly, screw the intermediate guns if you want to, although, as I say, the 77mm is an interesting choice. But you could just say, to hell with those guns, just mount that and grind out the AT7 and move on to the AT7, and never unlock the 77mm if you wanted to. That's entirely up to you. And that is what I would recommend you doing. Go and play the Archer before you play this. It will make your life so much nicer when you do eventually come to play this tank. As I say, this wasn't an option that was available to me when I did the grind, but it's available to you. And thank you very much to Mac for pointing that out to me. I hadn't realised that it was the same gun at the time. What else is there left to say about this before we go and have a look at the armour? Well, there are a few things I want to mention. Firstly, the gun traverse. This is a tank destroyer, so it doesn't have a fully rotatable turret. The traverse. Right, so firstly, the traverse from left to right on this tank is appalling. It's a very, very narrow cone. So that's a thing. Combine that with its dubious traverse speed, and that can be quite painful. The gun depression and elevation is also absolutely appalling. Basically, the gun points straight ahead. That's pretty much it. Equipment and whatnot, well, I've got my standard 3 consumables here. I doubt people will be using much else. Equipment, well, I just use my grinding equipment. If you want to give this thing proper equipment, then you're crazy, but if you want to, what do I recommend? I would say vents, to try and, well, make the gun a bit better. Well, no, there's a few options. Okay, gun rammer, I say gun rammer. 1. 2. You want some sort of view range enhancing equipment for when your team inevitably die by the droves and you have to carry the game. Optics are not really an option because 10% of garbage is still pretty abysmal. You know, that will take your view range to 363 meters. Woo! Which is still kind of dodgy. So binos, in my opinion, are essential on this machine. Having said that, you're going to spend a lot of time moving, so you don't want to be sat still for too long. But either way, I think rammer, binos, and then, well, there's a couple of different options. Camo net, it's probably a waste of time. I probably wouldn't bother with it, to be honest. I think your option is then between Improved vents, just to all-round improve your vehicle, get it firing faster and all that jazz. Or heavy spore liner to try and take less damage from artillery, because British tank destroyers give big, fat, slow silhouettes to artillery players, and picking one of these things apart is like a wet dream if you drive artillery. So, yeah, take your pick between those two. Crew skills, 6 cents on your commander, repairs on everyone else. I have found, it's probably because this is a garbage little weak spot that you'll find out about in a minute, I've found you often tend to lose a loader in this tank, which means that your very good rate of fire suddenly became not so very good, which is a little bit of a nuisance. So you might actually want to consider Jack of all trades on your commander, but I think primarily you want 6 cents on your commander and a set of repairs, basically. That would be my advice. Oh God, I've rambled on long enough about this damn thing. Yeah, screw it. Go and take a look at the armor scheme, and then we'll jump into some games. Okay, let's talk armor about this thing. So, you go through the British tank destroyer line, you hit the AT2, and things get heavily armoured. This becomes an assault tank, which is what AT stands for the record. So the AT2 is assault tank 2, you know, it's got armour, it's great. The gun's a little bit lackluster, but it's absolutely fantastic. And then you get to the AT8, and you expect it to behave the same. Not so much. So, the armour scheme. First thing to note, this strip along here, on the, as we look at it, right hand side of the machine, is basically a toolbox. It is not a hitbox. Shooting there is a complete and utter waste of your time. So where can you shoot? Well, on paper, the garage will tell you that this thing has, I think it's 203mm of armour. That's true, there are bits of this that have 203mm of armour. There. And here. What about the rest of it? Well, this bit is 76, sloped back at, well, an alright angle, but not enough for an auto bounce, giving you 161 effective, which is good enough to bounce a number of tier 6s and below. Fine. But, you know, they took the commander's hatch from the AT2 and they made it even bigger, so it's now a commander's tower. They've given you additional weak spots in the shape of these little machine gun things. A lot of these British tank destroyers are covered in machine guns. Just painful. So they're looking at 130 odd effective armour, which can be penned by tier 6s. This thing, 100, a bit more in some places, but is a weak spot. More to the point, look at this section where you have this side-mounted machine gun thing. It is a grand total of 64mm thick, going up to 76 in some places. It's bloody awful. Seriously, you could pen this with anything. You can roll up to this with a chaffee and pen it. It's just atrocious. There are tier 4 tanks, tier 4 light tanks in the game that can fire their regular armour-piercing ammo and punch through this section. What the hell? I don't understand. This tank is worse armoured than the AT2. Not just tier for tier. The armour on this tank is objectively and categorically worse than the AT2. Rear armour, I mean, who's even counting? Here's the thing. The front armour, there's a patch that is 76mm, 64mm thick. You look at the rear of the tank, it's 100mm thick. I mean, what the hell? But don't worry, because the rear of this section is 51. The side armour is 100 odd millimeters thick. It's just bewildering, but it's okay, because there's a section of the tank that with the spaced armour gives you over 300 effective armour. Feck off. This is just this little Ponzi strip there. Sorry, it sounds like I'm getting quite angry about this. Objective hat on. In short, the armour on this machine is... It works at long range against people who don't know where to shoot this. If you know where to shoot this, and I'm telling you where to shoot it here. If you know where to shoot this, I mean, this is not a small weak spot, this is a big weak spot that you can happily hit from a distance, or this, you know, this is better, but take your pick. Then you can chew this up at pretty much any range. The armour layout on this tank is utterly terrible. terrible, 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 terrible. It's horrible. And yeah, just icky. So we'll go and have a look at some games, and maybe you'll see the sort of thing I'm talking about. I have noticed, though, a lot of people don't seem to know about this weak spot over here. The terrible one, which makes your armour better than it looks on paper, because a lot of people don't know about that. They'll aim for your commander's hatch, which is fair enough, it's still a big spot. Or they'll just like auto-aim at the front of your tank, which is never going to work. I mean, look at this, you can have 300 and something in some places. But if you know what you're doing, you'll just shoot it here and you'll kill it. And then you're just tanking with your, admittedly, decent health pool. But the armour scheme on this tank is, it's basically a travesty. So yeah, let's go and have a look at some games, and I'll try and calm down and be less angry for you. Alright then, first up is a replay where we're top tier, using the 17-pounder gun. Both of these replays are going to be using the 17-pounder, I believe. Let me just check. Yep, that's the 17-pounder. Once I had it unlocked, I used the 17-pounder exclusively. And both of these games are from after I had it unlocked, so...
Let's get this show on the road.
This is Wide Park, which is a map you don't see very often, as it has been restricted specifically to mid-tiers. So I think in order to even get on this map, you have to be in a tier 4, 5 or 6 game, highest. Now you'll notice we actually have an M2 light in this game, and you might think, well, you know, he shouldn't be in here, and you know what, you would be right. But it's not the end of the world, you know, you're bringing a fast light tank into the game. They can act as a scout. The view range becomes an issue, but yeah, there we go. Anyway, I am heading over to this side of the map. With this matchmaking, my armour will be meaningful, but only really from a distance. Up close and personal, my armour is going to be significantly less problematic for people to penetrate. Now, I was saying bringing that M2 light into the game wasn't a horrific idea, but if he's just going to Suicide Scout, then he may as well not have bothered. Hasn't really told us much that's useful about the way the game is going to develop. So, KV-85, and at this range, I would put my money on an AT8 any day of the week. Having said that, he manages to track me, bounce the next shot. I didn't have my gun pointed at him, and got a very narrow gun traverse with the AT8, and terrible gun depression and elevation to boot. So, KV-85, but there's one shot into him, another KV-85, put a shot into him, bounces return fire. And we're just hanging back to try and give these guys a bit of a working over. But our KV-85 hasn't exactly put himself in the best position. One more shot into that KV-85, and our teammate polishes him off. So the scoreline is currently 3 kills apiece. Now, one thing that should have been very apparent at the beginning of this game, as I was moving into position, was the horrible top speed on this thing. This thing is slow. Painfully slow. As indeed all the tank destroyers in this line between tiers 5 and 9 are, inclusive that is. You know, the Electo is mobile, and actually, it's recently been changed, but now the FV215B183 is also pretty slow. Alright, KV-85 is trying to take a shot at me, but failing miserably. Looks like I managed to track him, as well as damage him. Someone, possibly our KV-85, puts a shot in him for 210, and he is down. Scoreline, 7-6. Chaffee. Alas. I don't manage to put any HP damage into him. There's a Hellcat. Wiggling to try and deny shots at my weak spot, but he still manages to put one in, although, as trades go, it's not the worst. I managed to put more into him. Chaffee, there we go, nice high damage roll, 170. So you can see here, with this matchmaking, we don't have to aim for weak spots. You know, you can see the good soft stats on the gun, 9-7, 10-7. Good soft stats on the gun. It aims quickly, it's accurate. Penetration is nice, 171. And for tier 6, the alpha damage is alright. Alas, we missed that shot on the A43. And our team members just threw that away. A43 is on fire, and we don't pick up the kill on him, which is annoying. So if I turn myself around to try and shoot at anyone toward my left, I'm potentially going to take flanking fire. Matilda I'm not so worried about. The side armor on this thing's pretty good. In fact, the A43 I'm not really that worried about, but they could give me problems. And rather than sitting there like a lemon, I decide to move forwards. The rest of our team is on the other flank. Surely they can stay alive for a little while, right? Yeah, about that. So we just lost our Stug. So over there now is the VK, a Churchill, and a Matilda. And I'm seeing if I can possibly get some flanking fire into the T67. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Knock down that tree, which is a bit of a boo-boo, but there we go. Churchill is whinging at our VK. Ooh, and the A43, he's a fast little blighter, has made it all the way around. Thankfully our Matilda nails him. Oh, I'm taking fire. I'm about to make a bit of a mistake. So I'm still moving forwards, thinking that my teammates have the other side of this map handled. The thing with the AT8, of course, though, is that you have to make these decisions and stick with them. So, I am moving forward now, because if I were to leave it until later, I would not be fast enough to move into an effective position. Moving now, I hope, oh, damn it, means that I can be in a position from which I can provide support. As it is, the rest of my teammates just died. Our Churchill, by the way, is being a nasty, despicable racist. I don't care what your rationale for it is, it's not excusable. There's the Matilda. Put one shot into him. Second shot into him, and if we're just going to sit here and trade here all day, I will win. And there's kill number 2. Matilda 4. I put a shot into him earlier on. There's another one. Now I sit here and open up at the last location of that Matilda 4 for a while. I did take some damage from the T-34-85. I had it in the back of my head that I will need to move at some point because I will need to potentially defend the base, and the AT8 is slow, and so if I'm going to go back to the base I'd better do it quickly. So I decide to move back now. Remember, the AT8 is slow. Really slow. So we start trundling back. And that's it. 20 kilometers an hour. That's as fast as we can go. And I don't want to cap the enemy base because there's 2 of them and 1 of me. They can outcap me. If they both sit in our base and I just sit in theirs, they win, and oh dear, they've started capturing our base. No worries. That's probably the T-34-85. Matilda 4, well, I knew where he was last spotted. It will take him a while to get to the base. And so I'm not too worried at the moment. I'm just trundling along. And then our capture counter starts going up in 2s. They're both in our base. And this is really the point of this replay. When you're top tier especially, you can bounce shots with the AT8. Your gun with the AT8 is really good, but your gun traverse can be problematic, as you saw when I got tracked. And it's just so slow. You have to predict what the enemy's gonna do, and you have to counter it, and you have to do it in enough time to mean that you can, well, change the outcome of the game. Even that Matilda was able to get to our base long before I was. The AT8 is just embarrassingly slow. But there we go. That's the nature of the beast. So there we go. There was a top tier game. Have a look at the post-battle results, depressing as they are, and then we'll jump into a bottom tier game. Okay, so this is our bottom tier game. Now, I don't know why. Oh wait, yes I do. I had a bit of a World of Tanks crashed on me when I played this game. Hence, I loaded in late, which is bad to start off with because, as have mentioned 1,000 times before, and I will mention again, the AT8 is slow. And so you lose. I mean, I lost about 20 to 30 seconds of. Oh no, World of Tanks didn't crash, sorry, it just took me a long time to load in. I lost about 20 or 30 seconds of valuable trundling time. Okay, anyway, also the matchmaking is absolutely terrible. Well, on bottom tier. I mean, it's about as bad as it will get in this thing. So, we are going to attempt to trundle up the K line and help out our friends, but our centre guys have been outflanked, and this is where the terrible mobility of the AT8 again rears its ugly head. And there, see the gun elevation, or lack of. I can't shoot from that position because the gun elevation is just too bad. Right, so I decide to have a change of heart. Instead, I'm going to move to the central region. Our guys in the centre have already been outflanked by a Hellcat. What else could be outflanking them? Dunno. It also appears that there are quite a few of the enemy team in the northern region of the map. So I'm hedging my bets, and you really have to do this so much with this tank because of, you guessed it, the terrible mobility. I'm hedging my bets that I'm going to be more valuable in this central region than I would be along the K line. This tank works best from range. The K line doesn't really give you that range to work with, and especially in this sort of matchmaking, if you want to bounce anything, you want distance between you and your target. Or at least between you and the person who's deciding you are their target. Cromwells on each team have died. It would appear they rushed into a far too aggressive a position, but as you can see, it looks like my gambit is potentially going to pay off. Our team in the north appear to be in the process of being overwhelmed, ditto for our guys in the centre. And the guys in the south appear to be the ones doing the outflanking, but once again I've decided to try and change to trundling along the K line. But I will eventually come to the conclusion again that that's a terrible, terrible idea. What's the other tank destroyer that's around here with me? It's Jagdpanther 2. Considerably more mobile machine. He could get away with not camping at the back, near the base. And again, I can't make my mind up. Indecision kills you, especially in this damn thing. And the north appears to have been pretty much overrun. So I'm going to defend our base from the, there we go, it's overrun, from the bad people approaching it from the north. Now I haven't actually pulled the trigger once yet. Again, using the 17-pounder gun. But the scoreline is 5 kills apiece, which is not terrible. And there we go, target number 1, it's the Cromwell. Good aim time, good accuracy. Somehow I bounced on the Cromwell and that shot hurt. Jagdpanther 2 is also aiming at the Cromwell. If I can put in one more shot, that'll take the little blighter out, but no, alas I can't. I'm moving to try and prevent shots at my weak spots and to try and open up the distance between myself and the bad guys. Our IS-6 is whinging and moaning and complaining like you would not believe. So for now, just ignore him. Now, the shot that was fired at me did 290 damage. My money would be on it being some sort of Tiger, possibly the Tiger 2 with a 105 gun. And it hit me on a weaker spot of armour. And there we go. Luckily for me, this Tiger 2 has the stock turret, which I can penetrate quite happily any day of the week. There we go. And Tiger 2 suddenly decides this is not a particularly good idea, as the Jagdpanther 2 puts him out of his misery. Now we're winning this 10-6. Hellcat is just down there, and you can see that, well, if I hadn't been here, maybe the game would have still gone okay. Not that it's over yet. Maybe our team would have struggled to hold the base from the push from the south. Don't know. There's one shot into the Hellcat. So both that Cromwell and the Hellcat are a one shot. Cromwell pokes himself out. I miss my shot, alas. And Cromwell is down. I have been tracked, and there's the A44. Swing around, and let's start putting shots into this fellow. I can bounce him. He can bounce me. I have the accuracy to aim for soft squidgy bits, but it's not always going to work, so I'm going to switch up to aim for his turret, which is soft and squishy, relatively speaking. There's another shot in. And another. One more to finish this fellow off. And there we go, that's kill number 2. And suddenly it's just that low health Hellcat and a Churchill Mark 7. And we're capping. So I'm just going to plough shots into the flank of this Churchill. 15 health remaining. Alas, my... Oh, and our team caps. And you can see from the map actually that our Hellcat had headed back, sorry, their Hellcat had gone back to their own base. Now, if I hadn't been in this game, perhaps it all would have gone smoothly anyway. And you can see I spent an awful lot of time dithering, loaded into the game late, blah 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 blah, but... a couple of things worth noting. That was a bottom tier game. But our gun was fine. The gun was not the problem. Our gun elevation sucked. Our gun traverse sucked. But we still managed to make that work, due in no small part to the good gun. Anyway, that's the sort of thing you can achieve, using it as more of a traditional tank destroyer when you're bottom tier. Take a good look at the post-battle results, and then we'll jump back into the garage and round things off. So what do I think about this machine overall? I think it's generally speaking pretty darn terrible. It's a very, 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 very good gun. There were too many verys there, but it's a good gun mounted on an absolutely terrible, terrible, terrible platform. And in my opinion, while the gun is good, or the guns, depending on which one you select, they are not good enough to make up for the poor performance of the tank in general. This is not a machine I recommend to really anybody. I'm not going to say free XP your way through it, because I don't think you should really free XP your way through any machine. I think it's worth playing every machine you come across personally, but I don't think this is going to be a keeper for anybody. I mean, about the best thing you can say about this is, well, at least it isn't a Churchill gun carrier. And that's a little bit like saying, well, at least my eyes aren't being scooped out with spoons. I mean, that doesn't really tell you much. This is just generally a poor machine, which is a shame, because the AT2, the British tank destroyer line up till now, has generally speaking been pretty good fun in my opinion. But the AT8, sorry, is just a horrible machine. There's quite a lot of tier 6 tank destroyers that are pretty painful actually, and this is definitely one of them. I've heard better things about the AT7, but I must admit, looking at it, I'm wondering if it's gonna still have things that are gonna really annoy me, and I don't think I'm gonna like it. But anyway, we're on the AT8. It's not a very good machine, and I can't really recommend it to you. But if you are gonna go for the original British tank destroyer line, then I do not recommend going through the Churchill gun carrier for any reason, because it's absolutely abysmal. In fact, I'm going to have to rebuy that to ace it at some point, and I'm really not looking forward to it. So I would recommend going through the AT8, but you know, don't dawdle too much. You probably want to just get through that and move up. So there we go. That's my opinion on this. It's a good gun, bad armor, bad everything else, really. Yeah. There we go. So despite the fact that that was a kind of negative review, I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless, and possibly even found it vaguely informative, if I'm very lucky. If you did, please feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel, and I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao ciao.